Hi everyone, welcome back. Today's topic is one most people don't think about. Mostly because it's something we're not supposed to think about. Churches. Those quiet places where people find comfort, peace, hope. But beneath many of them, there's something else entirely. Something most visitors don't realize they're standing on. Bodies. Hundreds, sometimes thousands, buried directly inside the church itself. And trust me, the more you learn about it, the creepier it feels. Before we begin, let me ask you a question. If you walked into a church alone at night, and someone whispered, "Remember, there are bodies directly beneath your feet," would you still keep walking? Let me know in the comments. I'm curious how brave you are. Alright, let's begin. Lights low, volume up. This is Creepy Facts About Bodies Buried in Churches. One of the most unsettling facts is that many churches weren't just accidentally built over burial grounds. They were intentionally designed for it. In medieval Europe, being buried in a church wasn't unique. It was the goal. People believed it gave them a higher chance of salvation. But churches didn't have unlimited space. So they placed burials under the floor, in the walls, in tiny chambers, and even under the altars. Imagine walking down a church aisle, and each step you take is exactly above where someone was placed centuries ago. Some churches had so many burials that the floor began to rise from the stacked layers beneath. They had to redo the floors multiple times, raising them higher and higher. So the floor you see today? It might be 2 or 3 meters higher than the original one, all because of the number of burials beneath. I don't know about you, but that alone is enough to make me rethink every old church I've ever visited. Most people only think of the floors, but back then, walls were fair game too. If you've ever seen a church with a strange sealed rectangle or a raised stone patch built into the walls, there's a good chance it's not decorative. Some priests, monks, and wealthy donors were buried inside the walls themselves. Visitors have described seeing faded carvings or inscriptions halfway up a church wall, not realizing they were looking at the outline of a centuries-old burial. Can you imagine leaning against a cold stone wall during a prayer service, not knowing that someone is literally inside it? Creepy, but true. Some churches remain cold no matter what season it is. Visitors often describe a sudden drop in temperature in specific areas, usually near historical burial sites. This isn't paranormal, it's physics. Burials and sealed stone chambers create pockets of cold air that leak upward through the floor. It's subtle, but old churchgoers used to believe it was the cold breath of the dead. Today, restoration workers still report feeling unexpected chills in certain areas, and later discovering that those spots sit directly above old burial vaults. Not necessarily scary, but definitely unsettling. Next time you're in an old cathedral and feel a sudden cold draft, you might be standing over something ancient, maybe even someone. Old floors weren't perfectly sealed. Moisture got in. Ground swelled. So did old wooden coffins. people in the 1600s wrote about hearing faint creaks from under church floors during storms. Not loud, just soft pops or cracks. Today, we'd explain it as pressure and movement. But back then, people genuinely believed that the buried ones stir when the heavens cry. Imagine being inside a quiet stone church, rain hitting the roof, and suddenly you hear a slow creak from beneath the floorboards. Even knowing the real explanation, I'd be out of there immediately. How about you? Across Europe and America, some churches built in the 1700s, 1800s have cellar rooms. Basements not used for storage, but for burials. Many of them aren't documented. Some don't even have names or records. Renovation teams sometimes open a hatch beneath a church carpet, expecting an old electrical panel, and instead find rows of wooden coffins arranged like shelves in a library, some dating back hundreds of years. What's even creepier? Most visitors who walk above those basements have no idea they're there. Right now, there might be a church somewhere with a Sunday school happening upstairs, and a chamber full of quiet coffins right below the kids' footsteps. That's a wild thought. Some historic churches used small stone tiles that could be removed to place new remains into family vaults. Think of it like a tiny trapdoor. Most of these tiles matched the floor perfectly. You'd never notice them unless you knew what to look for. Archaeologists have found hundreds of these in old European cathedrals, each one leading to a slot, chamber, or stack of remains below. Imagine kneeling to pray and realizing you're kneeling on what was basically a lid. That detail alone makes the hair on my neck stand up. This one is more eerie than scary. Back when bells were massive and made of heavy iron, their vibrations traveled through the walls and ground. If the church had stone crypts below, the vibrations made the chambers tremble slightly. Priests from centuries ago described it as the dead shifting under the toll. Of course, it was just sound waves. But if you were praying in a silent church and felt a faint rumble under your feet, your brain wouldn't care about science. Your instincts would scream. Comment if that would freak you out, because it definitely would freak me out. This isn't ancient history. This is modern. Construction crews in the UK, Ireland, and parts of the US still uncover forgotten church burials every few years. Sometimes they find stone vaults nobody documented. Sometimes old wooden floors collapse into hidden chambers. In one case, a tourist leaned on a church wall, and part of the wall cracked open, revealing a hollow space behind it. Inside were wooden objects, not dangerous, not graphic, just old. Very, very old. The church had been used weekly for almost 300 years with no one noticing. Who knows how many other places are hiding similar secrets? There's a reason these practices changed. Over time, people realized it wasn't sustainable or sanitary to keep packing burials beneath active buildings. Floors became unstable, moisture damage increased, and in extreme cases, the air quality suffered. Governments eventually banned the practice in most countries. But here's the creepy part. All the burials that were already there, they weren't removed. They were sealed, and left exactly where they'd been placed. So the next time you visit an old cathedral, remember, you're not just in a historic building. You're standing above a part of history that never left. And that is the extended deep dive into creepy facts about bodies buried in churches. I hope you learned something new tonight, and maybe discovered a few things you'll never be able to forget. Tell me in the comments, which fact disturbed you the most? Which one surprised you? And would you ever walk alone through a church at night after hearing all of this? If you enjoyed this longer episode, hit like, subscribe, and share it. And if you want another deep dive into creepy historical facts, just ask. I'm here for it. Thanks for staying with me until the end. Sleep well tonight. And remember, sometimes the past is closer than you think.